Awesome. So we've got a few things to talk about today. One of our advantages today is that no one is listening. So, that's exciting for us because we get to workshop some stuff. Our awesome producer is undoubtedly going to be listening to this. So, hi, Ari. How are you? Hope you're well.
Looking forward to your critical feedback.
Oh, so critical. Like, okay, you guys need to do all of that again. What the hell was that?
Well, she's got a great name that we can just refer to as our producer
Yep.
Ari in the
Yep.
background.
The all-knowing. First and foremost, we've got some names. We've got some names to pick. I think we've got some options here, and TC, I sent them over to you. So I think what we need to do is we need to just play around with them and see what we feel's most sticky.
And I'm assuming because we have so many options to choose from, our producer did not like our original name.
She did not like vacation rental business consultants, which
there you have it.
VRBC.com is a very expensive URL. So
I did go back and negotiate with them and got them back to 8,400, and I said 7,500 deal. And then Ari came back and said the name sucks anyway. So there you have it.
There you go. Don't spend $8,000 for something that your producer hates. I think that'll be a lesson for us.
Lesson
we'll probably
number
learn
one.
a couple times. First and foremost, I'm going to go ahead and squash this one because I can't say it and not sound like a jackass. So, but I'm still gonna play it. I'm gonna say, "Hey guys, this is Tim and TC, and we're the vacation rental guys." I don't like that one.
Yuck.
Yeah, but I also am trying not to do my radio DJ voice. So,
it's hard to not do your DJ voice with that name.
Yeah. And when we were going through in grad school, we were going through negotiations, and we were reading that Chris Voss book, Never Split the Difference. And, he talks a lot about when you're negotiating, you got to use your evening PM voice. Radio DJ voice. And I was like, nope, I don't like that.
Coming to you from
my closet. No. So I think I really like the vacation rental blueprint. I really do like that.
That's the one that really captured my imagination. I think it gives us a nice broad stroke to speak to. I think it's a nice visual. I like that. It feels good. There's several constructs out there for a domain that we can play with, but I like that one too.
And I think it's a question of do we go with the vacation rental blueprint as the title of the podcast? Do we still utilize vacation rental business consultants for a kind of centralized hub online for property owners who are looking to self-manage, that they have a central resource? Or do we say, hey, this is Tim and TC, and we are here putting together the vacation rental blueprint for you, or something like that? I think we've got to play around with how that intro works for vacation rental blueprint, because that and the profitable host. I like the profitable host as well.
So do I. And I think maybe you give both of those a run, let Ari give us some feedback, and then we can decide how to use it. Is it just the podcast? Is it the website, etc.?
Yeah, the one concern I have with the profitable host is on a podcast format. Are people going to think of the profitable host as a podcasting podcast? Because right now I'm not a profitable podcast host, so I don't want to send mixed messages.
Well, and as we think about the profitable host, it doesn't necessarily capture the real estate side, some of the things that we'll be able to bring to the owner or to the individual we're speaking to, where the blueprint just gives us a nice broad stroke, nice roadmap to play with.
All right, so I think we'll move forward on this recording, trying to make the vacation rental blueprint kind of naturally flow into our conversations and not say the word blueprint too much. All right, so we've got a few things to talk about today. I think for us, we're kicking off our first potential episode today, our first episode. We've got a lot of great conversations to be had on this platform, and a lot of opportunity to help a lot of people. So, really, I I think we should just kind of kick in with just some broad uh, backgrounds, just a broad summary of why we feel like we are the ones that can provide some insights and some expertise in this field to help other people who are either thinking about investing in their first property or are already in the midst of it. And I think for so many of our future listeners, it's going to be important for them to go back and just hear a summary of how we got where we are today.
Yeah, so I'll kick off and I'll talk a little bit about my background. So, got into short term rentals several years ago. Didn't necessarily know what I was doing, but loved the idea of creating a special place for families to come vacation. And I think along that journey, we've had some learnings, we've made some mistakes, and I think we'll share all of that with our listeners. What have we learned? What are the mistakes that we've made? And our objective is to give all of our listeners the confidence and the skill set to really manage their properties on their own. Because I think, Tim, what you and I have learned is that when you self manage, you stand a much better chance of, number one, putting more money in your pocket, but number two, creating the type of professional environment that you want for the guests.
Yeah, and I think one of the pieces that you and I share is a background that, yes, there's formal education there, and that's great. We've both done our time and gotten, all the MBAs and all the degrees that go into leading business, running business, operating businesses. And then we've really taken that knowledge and taken the experience and brought it with us into this industry, which I think helped give us a lot of competence and confidence early on where maybe we shouldn't have had it. And so now what we get to do is we get to convey some of our learnings and understandings and share all of our knowledge to be able to give others who maybe don't have the same background and experience a leg up and a feeling that, hey, I can do this too. I know for me, 25 years in the service and hospitality industry across all aspects of the industry, including hotels and the lodging space, high end, boutique, luxury properties all over the country. And I've kind of seen the more institutional approach to lodging, and it's fun, it's great, it's challenging. It's anyone listening that's ever been in it, the push and pull of that industry. And it taught me so much about how a guest utilizes space and the responsibility when people are in the lodging industry, this responsibility they have to understand that there's a lot of trust being placed uh, in you as a hotel operator, a motel operator, a short-term vacation rental, or a short-term rental host. People are putting a lot of trust in you to provide them with a safe, clean space to sleep. And so, there's a lot that I've been able to take from the last 25 years and bring to what I'm doing today, which is really focused on real estate, investment in real estate, specifically in the area of short-term vacation rentals. And in myself doing it, I've been able to leverage all of that previous experience to, I think, help create some memorable experiences. Now I'm still very early in my journey, and I think that's where you and I, our conversations are going to be able to take a very nice path with your experience and my experience, just being at different points along the journey. I'll be able to ask questions for you that, yeah, it'll help our audience, but it's going to help me too as I grow and expand in the space. And I think you'll be coming to me with similar questions specifically related to the kind of hospitality hotel space.
Yeah, and I love this space for a number of reasons. Tim, you and I both, we have families, we travel, we've stayed in hotels, we've stayed in the high end all the way down to the value hotels. And the idea of hosting a family in your home, your townhouse, your condo, there's just some real advantages that we want to explore. And I think our end game here is to encourage owners that love the hospitality space to self manage. We want to give them the confidence. We also want to elevate the standards within the short term rental industry. I think you and I have both seen over the past years the standards might be waning a bit. And one of the things that we want to achieve is helping to elevate those standards. And thirdly, we want every owner to put more money in their pocket. And we went down the route of exploring property management. And this podcast is not about property management because they end up making more money than the owner. So let's give all of our listeners the confidence to self manage. Let's elevate the standards within the short term rental industry so that families have great experiences as they travel. And let's make sure that our owners make a lot more money than they would otherwise.
And you said a bad word on this podcast,
What did I
and
say?
property managers. I think that's the
Oh, yeah.
that's
Yeah.
the when I think about what really took it over the edge for me, uh was an experience with a property managed property. And it was something that really just kicked me in the butt and said, okay, you can do this better than this particular. And I'm sure there's some great property managers out there. It's out there. It's inevitable. There's some really great companies out there. But to be honest, they better be great because they do take the majority of your profits. If you're operating your vacation rental with the proper maintenance and upkeep that it requires to keep it a five-star property, you are going to eliminate your margins, your profit margin, completely with a great property management company. And at the end of the day, self-managing is, and I think you hit it. It's self-managing is really limited by an individual's confidence that they can do it.
And our blueprint does not involve or include knocking property managers. I think what
Right.
really discouraged me was when I ran my P&L and you see that a property manager, most property managers, depending on, where your property is, they're going to take 20 to 25%. And they usually take that off the top. So in addition to that 20 to 25% off the gross revenue, you also have the platform fees. So what I found every time I ran the model, I was making very thin margins. And then I looked over and saw the property manager was making 20 to 25%. So that was the real kick in the rear to me to let's think about this differently. And why am I turning this over to someone when I've been in the hospitality industry for so many years? I've learned so much and I love working with people. So there was a fear factor and I had to overcome the fear factor and I had to overcome the I don't know what to do and just start by doing something and be willing to make the mistake. So the P&L is what really was the driving force for me is I like to make a little bit of money and I'd like to make more than the property manager.
Well, and that's the secret of a great property management company. I think when you really boil it down, it's systems and processes. Great property managers, just like most great, especially service businesses. There's great systems and processes in place, and what I love about systems and processes is they're easily replicable if you have the system and you're ready to kind of edit and shift as you go. And that's, I mean, from my years in the space and the time that I've been doing this for in the vacation rental space, I'll tell you, when something goes wrong, when I have an opportunity to improve, it really boils down to, oh, I didn't have a system for that, or I didn't have the right system for that. And so let me work to establish that and fill that gap.
Yeah, and we'll use system and process. Our listeners will hear us use those terms a lot because, one thing we experienced and one thing I believe other owners experience is fear kicks in when the unpredictable happens. And you can avoid a lot of the unpredictable when you have systems and process. And that's what, part of what we're going to do here is help people think through all of the what ifs, and we'll have systems and process to offer so that as an owner, when that unpredictable arises, it won't be unpredictable. You'll have a system and
Right.
process to deal with it. And that's going to give you some of the confidence you need to really do this well. And honestly, have fun doing it. You and I talk about that a lot. Is that yeah, we love dealing with people. This is a lot of fun. There are times that it's a little bit frustrating, but that comes with the territory. At the end of the day, I love working with people and love helping to create experiences for families traveling. We own in the Orlando area, and people come to Orlando and they want to experience Disney and Universal, and they come with high expectations. And being a small part of that, making sure that the place they stay is part of that wonderful experience, that's pretty fulfilling.
Yeah, and there's so much advantage to understanding and picking the right area for you. I think for Central Florida is a great area for a lot of people. I too am here in Central Florida, and I grew up here in Central Florida, so for me, I know the area, I'm familiar with the area, and there are a lot of those advantages. Those individuals who grew up around Nashville or grew up in Denver or the Rocky Mountains or California. You're going to have different connections and probably different draws to looking at those properties. But the beauty of it is that, again, the systems and the processes, and going into that with a clear understanding that that first year is going to be a lot of learning. And if you're committed to those systems and processes and building them as you go or editing them as you go, there's a lot of strength to that. I think this year you and I could write a book, which we might just do. And I just think, oh, there's a hurricane coming. Okay, well, shit, what do we do? Right. And there's a lot of learning, but we had fun doing it. And I think you have to go into it with that excitement that you're going to come up against obstacles or experiences that you've never had to work through before.
And not only is there a hurricane coming, but video doorbell. There's an alligator in my front yard. Should I contact the guest and let them know not to go out their front door right now? So
Right.
yeah, there's things like that that always come up. But there's a lot of podcasts out there on this topic, and we're not for everybody, but we are for a very specific audience. We really are for that individual who wants to self-manage. Maybe they haven't committed fully to it yet, but we're for that individual. We're going to help them build confidence, systems and tools for that confidence. We want them to be profitable. We want them to have fun along the journey, and we want to take some of the mystery away. And I think, Tim, in the years we've been doing this, all the mystery that was originally there, it's really not a mystery. It's just a matter of learning it, being willing to make a few mistakes, learn from those mistakes, build a system around those mistakes, and carry on. So I think for that individual that wants to self manage, make some money, you probably are not going to make as much money as your real estate agent told you would, but we'll help you there too. We'll take away some of the lies of the industry and bring some truth to it.
Yeah, and I've listened to so many podcasts over the years, and like you said, the industry or the space is full of stories about how easy it is. Oh, all you need to do is just buy a property. Well, I mean, just buying a property in and of itself is a complex, complicated negotiation in order to get yourself positioned in the right way for future success and a successful eventual exit. But there's a lot of that content, and we're not going to provide you that content. I don't think we're ever going to say, oh, this industry is so easy. To be perfectly honest, knowing TC and knowing myself, we wouldn't be doing it if it was easy. We kind of like the challenge. We like the uncertainty. We like the adversity that this industry presents. But this is not a podcast about, well, this is an easy way to make millions of dollars. There's a path to profitability. There's a very clear path to long term financial freedom and success, but that doesn't mean it's easy.
Yeah, and I think you've got to start with that successful first property. And I think what we can tell our listeners is there is a path to 30 to 40% profit margins. That's realistic. But additionally, someone else is paying your mortgage. You're building equity into that investment. And there's a real financial component to this, but one property is not a get rich quick. But we're going to talk to you about how to make more money, how to build equity in your property. And if you have the desire to go from one property to two to three to four to five, we'll take you down that path. That's part of the blueprint as well. But we probably will not have a lot of guests coming on saying, how did I go from one to 100 and make $1 million in 6 months? That to
And
us, while maybe it happened, it's an unrealistic expectation. And that's not what this podcast is about.
no, I know you've talked to hundreds of property owners, and I myself have talked to hundreds of property owners over the last 3 years, and it is concerning the number of these owners that just are lost. They're talking to me and say, "Hey, when I bought into this house, I was told, that this thing, it was going to make $300,000 a year, and it was gonna be great for me, and I didn't realize that $300,000 in revenue, A, is extremely challenging, but B, that's not what's going into my checking account. That's before operation expenses. That's before mortgage. That's before all of the general expenses that go into maintaining the property. And so before you know it, I don't know how much I'm making, and I don't think I'm making anything because I have to pay the mortgage every month. And there's a lot of people out there that put life savings into that first property with the understanding that this thing was basically they were buying an ATM, which I've heard a couple times as being a sales pitch to some of those new property owners out there who went into this and got sold a bill of goods that isn't true. Now, can that be turned around? Yeah, that can be turned around. We can build a strategy. We can work together, and oftentimes that's what we end up doing is working with these owners to help provide them clarity, full transparency on a month to month basis, and then get them to understand what their occupancy rate needs to be for the year, how that ebbs and flows throughout the course of a seasonable fiscal year, and then from there how they can manage their expenses. And 100% of the time the margins are slimmer than they expected, but at least there's the transparency to understand that, wait, I didn't buy an ATM, I bought a house, and a house, things in homes break, there's damages, and I have to keep this thing pristine at all times for my guests because one bad review is going to negatively impact my occupancy goals. So I do think that there's a lot of great stories out there, like you said, TC, that are probably true, but they are the minority. And I think we need to just stay very clear in our understanding that we're not here to sell you a bill of goods that, hey, this thing is going to just make you $1 million. It's more about this can make you money with the right strategy in place, and there is financial freedom with a scaling strategy over time, but you can only get there if you do right now really well.
Yeah. And if you bought that house, you really didn't buy a house, you bought a business. And the short term rental industry, that residential real estate, whether it's a house, a condo, or a townhouse, that now is a business. And every business has a cyclical nature to it. And if you bought your home during COVID, you basically could charge whatever rent you wanted to because the hotels were shuttered. They were
Right.
closed, or if they were open, they were only accepting a very low occupancy. So that really allowed the owners to take control. They could charge whatever they want. They didn't have to worry about their properties being cleaned because there was such a demand for some place to go. Well, that's turned around now. The hotels are back open. They're offering great service again. They're offering nightly cleaning of the room, things they weren't during COVID. So there's now a competitive nature to this cyclical business. And we're going to help navigate those waters. Part of what we're going to do here is tune into what's going on today. Why is it going on? How should we think about that as a collective group? And how can we guide you through that to where your profit margin isn't eroded? There's going to be peaks and valleys, but we don't want to erode it. We want you to always have a nice, healthy bank account. And part of that's going to be tuning into the real life circumstances that we're facing.
Yeah, and just like in the hotel industry, you're going to have your slow season. That doesn't mean your slow season is a zero occupancy season. It means that you need to adjust your strategy specific to your rate down to your comfort level. And I think that's, you and I both, we've talked about, like, we have a strategy. We're comfortable with our home sitting empty this many days because we know our strategy is that we want to set this rate as a bottom. We don't want to go below this rate, and we want to have this level of occupancy, and we don't necessarily need to go through this. We don't need to elevate our occupancy at a level that makes it challenging. But there's also that reality of, we understand there are people who, yes, they bought during the pandemic and they've got a great interest rate. And then there's others who bought within the last 6 months thinking that they bought an ATM, and they're sitting on a 6% interest rate. And now they've got to figure out how they fill this house to cover their mortgage. Some of those pieces we can help inform the buyer, the future buyer, to make sure they understand the right point of entry or the optimal point of entry. And then from there, those individuals with existing challenges on their mortgage, or existing challenges with their interest rate driving up their monthly mortgage payment to a level that they have an unsustainable occupancy and rate they need to charge in order to get the house filled. Uh, Again, this all goes back to, there's a strategy there. There's something there that we can help put together, and we'll work through that on this podcast, on these podcasts that we do weekly. We're gonna help individuals navigate and feel like they've got a little more power, because it's definitely not the best feeling to be sitting on that end of month. I got to cover the mortgage on my end because I didn't have the occupancy that I needed in order to cover it.
And while we're not economists, we'll try to bring the economy into the conversation on a regular basis because the economy does impact the industry. If you listen to any of the economists today, there's at least a percentage that believe there may be a soft recession coming our way. Well, when that happens, what happens to travel? And the impact on travel is going to have an impact on hospitality. So, how do we think about all that? If you even log into the Disney lodging right now, you'll see that they're offering 25 to 35% discounts. Why? Because they're starting to see a little bit of a downturn in the traveler. And also, this is the down season. So sometimes you've got to go a little bit off strategy, but not totally. And again, we're going to help you navigate those waters. We'll bring the economy in. We won't be able to tell you what's going to happen because no one can, but we can have the conversation and help you think through it.
I'll tell you, I've never once been on a cruise, and I've never really had an interest to go on a cruise. But the number of people that I've spoken with recently that are talking about going on a cruise, I was like, man, and specifically those Disney cruises. Uh, it's crazy. I was thinking the other day, Disney must have doubled down on their advertising for their cruise packages, because I've never heard so many people talking about it. I've never heard about a Disney cruise so much. So then you've got to start to think, okay, well, to what extent am I competing with, if we're in Central Florida, for example, what extent am I competing with cruise lines now? More than during the pandemic, where I certainly didn't want to be on one of these boats, but maybe now individuals are starting to think about it a little more as a travel and tourism destination. So instead of going to Central Florida for, a park or a theme park and a big lavish vacation, maybe I'm going to go to the Florida coast and jump on one of those cruise ships for 3 or 4 days. And there's always those variables. There's always those changes in other organizations' strategies that are going to impact you. And that's where we can have, this is an environment where we can have those conversations and talk about those different changes in consumer sentiment. Maybe they're economics based, maybe they're just based on people want to get out to sea, but more than they ever have before.
Yeah, and while we've covered a lot of topics on this intro podcast, what we promise our listeners is we'll bring a topic, a very focused topic weekly to you It'll be timely in some cases based on what's going on in the industry. But we really want to have that conversation with you that at the end of the podcast, you've got a takeaway. You've got things that are actionable for you. You've had some key learnings, and hopefully that will encourage you to tune in the next week. And we're going to continue to commit to this. We're going to bring focus to you every week, but the end result is give you the confidence, elevate the standards within the short-term industry, and put more money in the bottom line and in your pocket for you. So that's our commitment to you. We've been broad today, but every week you tune in, we're going to bring you a topic that we believe is actionable for you, the owner, that's willing to self-manage, and we'll go on this journey together.
It's also important to say, yeah, we've got content for days. I mean, the beauty of it is we've done a lot in our respective industries, but we've had a lot of amazing experiences and a lot of challenges within the short-term vacation rental space. So our content we can just pull from our life, from our experience, and really kind of systematically move through the full life cycle of a short-term vacation rental, and that is from considering buying your first to actually acquiring your first business or vacation rental, operating it, building the strategy, and then operating, and then even mapping out a future exit or addition of more properties. And so we've got content, but it also comes back to, we wouldn't be where we are today if we were horrible listeners, right? We want to hear from our listeners to the podcast about what they want to hear us talk about, what they want to talk about, because there's a lot of power to the group conversation that can help inform us and say, hey, we had this on the docket this week, but I've heard a couple people say we really wanted to talk about this, so let's spend some time digging into this and giving you our perspective. Which, again, like TC mentioned, we're not economists, we're not doctors, we only play them on TV, but we've got the ability to break down strategy and also access to some really amazing guests through our years in this industry to be able to engage with, if we don't know an answer or if we don't understand it as thoroughly as we feel we should in order to present it to you, we can work to find a guest and bring them on the episode and really do a deep dive with them.
It's a good point, and we're not going to be preachy. I think a lot of the lessons and a lot of the experiences we can share come from this is what we did, and this is what we wish we would have done. And those learnings, I think, will really help our listeners, build their confidence for their short-term rental ownership.
Well, excellent. I think we've got a good kickoff episode here. Thanks everyone for not listening today. Hopefully you catch this episode in the future when you want to learn a little bit more about who we are, and you've happened upon one or two of our other episodes. So thanks for catching up with us. Thanks for listening to our story. And we're very excited to go along this journey and share our journey and hear from you along the way.